Leonardo DiCaprio gave a speech at the UN about climate change, and he knocked it out of the park. Now, I had to chop it down a little bit, but let's listen, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen. One of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious characters, often solving fictitious problems. I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were a fiction, as if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away. But I think we all know better than that now. Every week we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. None of this is rhetoric, and none of it is hysteria. It is fact. The scientific community knows it, industry knows it, governments know it, even the United States military knows it. The chief of the U.S. Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.
Had two great lines in there. He said, you can make history or you can be vilified by it. Kind of hard to argue with that given the current circumstances. And also, I pretend for a living, but you do not. AKA, act. Do something about this. Look, the first line is so true. I don't think anybody understands exactly how true that is. That if the United Nations does not act now, if all these different, big governments around the world do not act now on climate change, totally true that they will be rightly vilified by history. Okay? They can either make history by moving towards renewable energy at 1,000 miles an hour, or they're going to be vilified because they're going to accelerate global warming, possibly to the point of no return. If we're not already there, I might be a little more pessimistic than Leonardo DiCaprio is. But side note, I think he's one of the only guys on the planet who can rock a full Taliban beard and women still want to fuck him. If I tried to pull off the Taliban beard, first of all, it would be like a Brillo pad on my face. It would look like Donald Trump's ferret on his head, except underneath my chin, right? And it'd be like wiry and gross. People be like, oh my God, are you okay? But when he does it, women are still like, oh, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. He's so hot. I must say, I do have a little man crush on Leo now after watching this speech. But he also went on in the clip. Like I said, I had to chop it down for time purposes, but he lists off the solutions to the current situation with climate change, and he's right. He nailed it. So, for example, he said, well, we need to immediately stop giving subsidies and special tax breaks to oil companies. We also need to do a carbon tax, and we also need to invest in renewable energy because we have the ability to do it if we move down that road. We just have to want to do it and take action. So even his solutions were on point. But just to buttress his argument further, let me remind you all of the massive meta-analysis that was recently released. They looked at all of the peer-reviewed climate change studies from 1991 until 2012, and these are the results. Okay, yeah, over 13,000 studies say that global warming is happening and it's man-made. Only 24 say it's not. So in other words, to put that as a percentage, it's about 99.9% or so that say, yeah, it's happening and it's man-made. Let's fucking do something about it. Now, understand, man, here's the saddest angle possible to this story. The only reason why we haven't already moved towards wind, solar, geothermal, thorium, all these renewable energies, is because of the fossil fuel industry. I mean, they have a stranglehold on all these governments around the world, and so many people get so rich because of the fossil fuel industry that, you know, they've stymied any possible attempt to move forward and seriously create a green economy. But eventually the jig is up and we have to do it. It's a matter of necessity. But as of right now, nothing gets in the way of business as usual because we have, not just in the U.S., but in most places in the world, we have governments that are totally, open for business, and they're just sold off to the highest bidder. And who is the highest bidder in so many cases? The fossil fuel companies.